This morning, one step closer, the government wins the support of unions for its crucial JobKeeper package. Shark attack, a 23-year-old man fatally mauled off Queensland's Central Coast. And George Pell's day of reckoning. Will the Cardinal walk free from prison as the High Court rules on his appeal?
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good morning. The government's crucial JobKeeper relief package is one step closer to being passed after it secured the support of the unions. Political reporter Taylor Aiken is in Canberra. Taylor, an agreement was reached late last night.
Good morning, and that's right. This JobKeeper package passed a key hurdle last night, paving the way for it to be legislated during a special sitting of Parliament tomorrow. Union bosses had expressed concern about how the scheme would be implemented through a temporary change in the Fair Work Act. But after a long day of negotiations between Attorney General Christian Porter and ACTU boss Sally McManus, they managed to reach a deal that would ensure unions can challenge employers who do not abide by the rules of the scheme. The government has so far refused to budge on the call to include more casuals in the scheme, including those who hadn't been with their employer for at least 12 months. But despite clashes over casuals, union bosses and Labor say they accept the landmark wage subsidy must be passed as soon as possible. Parliament will sit for just one day tomorrow, with the government hoping to rush through this package, saying they believe they have the support to pass it, saying 6 million Australian jobs depend on it.
OK, Taylor, thank you. Anger is growing from locals of the New South Wales port, where the virus-riddled cruise ship Ruby Princess was allowed to dock with 200 sick crew on board. 12 passengers from the ill-fated vessel have died, and there are more than 620 confirmed coronavirus cases. The ship will be docked for 10 days so authorities can conduct medical assessments as a criminal investigation into the fiasco gets underway.
The government has just snuck in a whole bloody cruise ship. This is not on. This is not on.
We're not impressed at all. Too close to home.
Locals say they're worried the region's hospital system will be overwhelmed if crew members need urgent medical treatment. Several major beaches on Queensland's Gold Coast will be off limits from midnight in a bid to slow the spread of coronavirus. The Spit, Surfers Paradise and Coolangatta will be closed to everyone after people continued to flout social distancing measures. It follows the cancellation of another major event. The Ekka has been scrapped for the first time since World War II. Organisers say the decision is in the best interest of public health. 4 Qantas crew members who did not have to go into quarantine after a flight have tested positive for COVID-19. The staff operated a flight from Chile which landed in Sydney on March 29th. All passengers from that flight went into forced isolation in hotels for 14 days, but crew members were exempt from the isolation orders. A hefty fine for a learner driver for breaching lockdown restrictions in Victoria will be reviewed. But police are still standing firm after penalising the teenager $600 for failing to stay at home.
Hunter Reynolds has learnt a costly lesson. The 17-year-old heavily fined for taking a driving lesson with her mother during the lockdown.
We hadn't gotten out, we weren't planning on getting out, we were just doing a loop around and then coming home.
After leaving their home at Hampton East, Hunter and her mum were pulled over by police on Peninsula Link at Frankston North.
She came up and just said that, we were driving unnecessarily and that we would be copping a fine.
The Year 12 student was fined $1,600 for breaching the COVID-19 stay-at-home directive. Driving lessons are not permitted. But learners can drive to get to work, education, medical appointments or to go shopping.
We can all try and find ways out of doing this, but we're all doing it tough in this environment.
Far from backing down, police are doubling down, redeploying 240 PSOs and transit police to flood now empty shopping strips. They'll conduct overnight foot patrols to protect commercial properties in the CBD, South Yarra and St Kilda, as well as suburban areas like Dandenong, Box Hill, Doncaster and Geelong.
One reason police are taking a heavy approach is that there are concerns some people will see the Easter break as an opportunity to flout the stay-at-home rules.
Hunter Reynolds' fine will be reviewed, but the hardline approach to the need to stay at home remains. Cameron Bowe, 7 News.
A sixth person from a Sydney nursing home has died from coronavirus. The 90-year-old man was a resident at the Dorothy Henderson Lodged aged care home in Macquarie Park. He's the 19th victim in New South Wales. It takes the country's death toll to 41. A drive-through coronavirus testing clinic has been set up at Bondi in Sydney as authorities concentrate on transmission hotspots. 12 key areas across the state have been identified where the virus is spreading through the community with no known source. People in the hotspots are urged to get tested if they have any symptoms. Education ministers across the country will meet today to canvass options after concerns were raised about how the pandemic could affect Year 12 results, extending the academic year, posting final exams and boosting overall scores have been flagged as solutions. It comes as Victorian families are being urged to keep their children home from school for term 2. Schools will remain open for parents considered essential workers or who are unable to have their kids at home. Plans to make parking around hospitals free for health workers are being ramped up around the country. Victorian councils have been asked to waive fees around hospital precincts to take the pressure off frontline nurses and doctors. The City of Melbourne has already called off parking inspectors. In New South Wales, the Premier is today set to announce more relief funding, which includes free accommodation and parking for healthcare workers. To other news now, a man has been killed by a shark off Queensland's Central Coast. The 23-year-old suffered extensive leg and arm injuries in the attack off Northwest Island around dusk yesterday. He was flown to Gladstone Hospital in a critical condition but died a short time later. He'd been moored on a boat off the island with friends. It's the third shark attack in the area in 4 months. He spent more than a year in prison convicted of child sex abuse, but today George Pell could walk free. In just a matter of hours, the High Court will rule on the 78-year-old's appeal in what is his last chance to clear his name.
The moment of truth for Cardinal George Pell, his day of reckoning. Almost 3 years since he was charged with abusing 2 choir boys in Melbourne's St Patrick's Cathedral in the 1990s. Convicted on the compelling evidence of a sole living accuser, now a middle-aged man. Pell has always maintained his innocence. His first appeal was dismissed by 2 out of 3 judges in Victoria's Court of Appeal. Now Australia's High Court will decide if that decision was correct. At previous stages of the case, victims' advocates and supporters of the Cardinal have gathered outside courthouses. But it's not expected today, thanks to social distancing laws in the time of coronavirus. The verdict, too, will be unusual. The judges are not travelling because of the pandemic. The ruling to be handed down to a near-empty court in Brisbane. Whatever the decision, it'll bring an end to one of the most significant criminal trials in Australian history. Gina Trahan, 7 News.
A man has been shot dead by police after setting himself on fire in Brisbane overnight. Officers were called to a disturbance at Sunnybank Hills, where the man had poured fuel over himself and a house. He left before police arrived, but they tracked him to a car park nearby. Officers say they were forced to open fire on the 43-year-old when he set himself on fire and ran towards them. Former New South Wales detective Gary Jubelin is facing potential jail time after being found guilty of making illegal recordings during the investigation into missing toddler William Tyrrell. Jubelin was accused of recording 4 conversations with the Tyrrell family's elderly neighbour Paul Savage in 2017 and 2018. Savage was the subject of surveillance warrants at the time, but the devices used by Jubelin to record the conversations were not authorised. Jubelin says he respects the court's ruling, even though he thought he was acting legally. A Queensland police officer who was run over and left for dead has returned to work 18 months after his horrific ordeal. Constable Peter McGolty is back behind a desk at Goodna Police Station in Ipswich. In 2018, he was hit and dragged several metres by a stolen car while he was laying road spikes. The 25-year-old suffered critical injuries and spent 2 months in hospital. Constable McGolty will never walk the beat again, but will work in intelligence gathering and profiling of offenders. A Sydney man will face court today charged with attempted murder following a dramatic arrest at Inner West Police Station late yesterday. The 23-year-old was reporting for bail when police made their move. The suspect is accused of stabbing a 24-year-old man multiple times in Brighton Le Sands in January. A police pursuit in California had to be called off due to heavy rain. Officers initially tried to stop the suspected stolen car by ramming it. They spent more than an hour chasing the vehicle across Los Angeles. Despite help from a police chopper above, a heavy downpour forced them to call off the pursuit. Checking Tuesday's weather now. Partly cloudy in Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra. A cloudy day in Melbourne with a top of 16 degrees. A shower or two in Hobart. Partly cloudy in Adelaide and 21. Sunny in Perth and 34 degrees. And partly cloudy in Darwin and 35. Coming up on 7 Early News. Boris Johnson in good spirits as he battles coronavirus in hospital. And the campaign to support pubs around the country. How you can help your local. A Category 5 cyclone has battered Vanuatu, causing major damage across large parts of the country. Cyclone Harold made landfall, bringing torrential rain, flash flooding and winds of up to 215 kilometres an hour. It forced tens of thousands of people to seek emergency shelter. Authorities in Vanuatu lifted the country's coronavirus ban on public gatherings so people could make their way to evacuation centres. Fiji is now in the firing line. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's in good spirits after spending the night in hospital with coronavirus. The PM is being treated at St Thomas's Hospital in London for persistent symptoms including a temperature and a cough 11 days after testing positive. In a tweet, Mr Johnson said he was keeping in touch with his team and thanked hospital staff for taking care of him. The number of coronavirus deaths in the UK is now more than 5,300, an increase of 439 in a day. In the US, the number of deaths from the coronavirus has hit a grim milestone, with more than 10,000 people dying from the disease. New York remains the epicentre, with more than 4,700 deaths recorded. Almost 600 people have died in the state in the past 24 hours. The total number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the US is almost 350,000. Meanwhile, Australians from the Sandam and Rotterdam cruise liners are en route home from San Francisco. Sweden's Prime Minister has warned the country to expect thousands of deaths from coronavirus. The warning comes as Swedish doctors and academics published an open letter criticising the government for its relaxed approach to the pandemic. Bars, schools, restaurants and offices remain open while vulnerable people have been urged to stay at home. Sweden's coronavirus death toll has risen to more than 400, a fatality rate in per capita terms that's higher than the US. Japan is set to declare a state of emergency in the capital Tokyo and 6 other regions as the number of coronavirus cases continues to soar. In Tokyo, there are now more than 1,000 confirmed cases, more than double the number a week ago. So far, Japan has confirmed 85 deaths from COVID-19. The state of emergency will last about a month, but authorities will not have the power to order citizens to stay at home. Checking finance now. The Dow Jones has surged more than 1,200 points as investors react to reports of an easing number of coronavirus cases. The Nasdaq is also climbing. In London, the FT 100 is up 166 and Germany's DAX has gained. Close to home, Japan's Nikkei closed 756 points higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is up. The All Ords and the ASX 200 both closed higher. On the commodities market, gold is trading at $1,658 an ounce. Oil is $26 a barrel. The Aussie dollar is buying just under 61 US cents, 66 Japanese yen and $1.02 New Zealand. A fortnight since the Prime Minister called last drinks at Australia's pubs and clubs, a campaign has been launched to help them survive. For the Love of Your Local allows you to pay for a beer now and get 2 drinks when the doors finally reopen.
The Royal Hotel Leichhardt, established as a local pub in 1886, transformed into a local grocer in 2020.
People are saying I'm silly even doing what I'm doing today, being open, but we're here for hope.
While the beer taps have been taken away, you can still buy a pint. A new website for the Love of Your Local, offering pubgoers a 2-for-1 deal at their favourite venue. Pay now, drink later.
They're in urgent need of cash flow in these difficult times. Without this, many of them unfortunately may not survive.
Carlton and United Breweries teamed up with the Australian Hotels Association for the campaign, hoping to raise $1 million for pubs and clubs.
This is a win-win situation because the publican receives the money now, the person gets to support their local pub, and at the end they receive 2 pints for the price of 1.
Another beer giant, Lion, is offering pubs full credits for unused beer kegs and free collection to help them through. Almost 1,000 pubs and clubs Australia-wide have already signed up to this online campaign, but if your local isn't on here, all they need to do is go to the website and register.
Not to say it's going to make a big difference, but it'll make a difference. So just give it a go.
Otherwise, your local might just close for good. Alex Hart, 7 News.
Next on 7 Early News, the radical plan the AFL is considering to save its season. And the Wallabies' new coach considering walking away from the job before a game has even been played. Our top stories this morning, and in breaking news, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been moved to intensive care as he struggles with coronavirus. Unions back the government's $130 billion wage subsidy plan after assurances workers won't be taken advantage of. A 23-year-old man has died after being fatally mauled by a shark off an island on Queensland's central coast. And the High Court will deliver its verdict this morning on George Pell's appeal against child sex abuse convictions. The AFL is considering a radical plan to resume its season with all teams playing out of 3 hubs. Collingwood President Eddie Maguire revealed on radio the competition could restart with all games being played out of WA, South Australia and Tasmania.
It's come from a number of sources, so I'm not necessarily claiming it as our idea, and the AFL are looking at it, so that's something that is being considered.
The AFL remains hopeful the season will restart on the 31st of May. The NRL will consider scrapping competition points from the 2 rounds already played this season. The league's Innovation Committee will discuss wiping the slate when it meets this Thursday and will consider restarting the competition with 2 8-team conferences. Players continue to stay in shape during the league shutdown.
As soon as the start-up date comes around, you want to be ready, you want to be behind the game. Don't want the year to go to waste.
The Premiership could restart as early as the 28th of May. There are fears newly appointed Wallabies coach Dave Rennie could walk away from the job if Raylene Castle is sacked as Rugby Australia CEO. Rennie is yet to coach a game for the Wallabies after signing in January, but reports say the Kiwi would reconsider his future with the team if the embattled Castle is stood down. The Rugby Australia head has come under heavy criticism recently after the organisation's dire financial position was revealed. One of golf's biggest events, the Open Championship, has been cancelled this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. But it's better news for the sport's other big events. The US Masters has been rescheduled to start on the 12th of November, while the US PGA Championship will now start on the 6th of August. The US Open has also been pushed back, now slated for a September 17 start. Aussie tennis star Nick Kyrgios has opened up his heart to those affected by the coronavirus crisis. The world number 40 made a post on Instagram offering his support to anyone needing food or help during these difficult times, saying he'll even drop food off at people's doorsteps, no questions asked. Next on 7 Early News, a closer look at how the weather's shaping up in your part of the country. An Israeli zoo is celebrating some good news during the coronavirus shutdown, the birth of several new animals. A rare ginger baby baboon called Sinai is causing a stir among the zoo's troop. The cheeky youngster is already playing with other baboon babies. And zookeepers are also celebrating the arrival of an elephant calf who came as a bit of a surprise when its mother gave birth earlier than expected. Taking a look at the weather around the country, fronts will bring cool winds and isolated showers to Tasmania, South Australia and Victoria, and help send brisk winds and showers along the New South Wales coast and ranges. Troughs will cause showers and storms in the northern tropics, and in northern WA, Tropical Cyclone Harold will move from Vanuatu towards Fiji. Around the capitals, partly cloudy in Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra. A cloudy day in Melbourne with a top of 16 degrees. A shower or two in Hobart. Partly cloudy in Adelaide and 21. Sunny in Perth and 34 degrees. And partly cloudy in Darwin and 35. And that is 7 early news for this Tuesday, the 7th of April. I'm Angela Cox. Now it's time for Sunrise with Koshi and Nat.
Breaking news, Boris Johnson in ICU. The British Prime Minister in intensive care. His